All right, back here with Captain Marty, and he's got another riveting story for us today, I'm quite sure. And Captain, I was thinking about it. Ooh, got a question. What is probably one of the times you were offshore when you were the most shook up? That's the word, shook up.
Justin, that covers a lot of different times, but there's one that I will never forget.
Okay.
Nor will other people involved with this story. I'll be back to tell you what it is in just a moment.
Real. That's the first word that comes to mind when I think about Outland Seafood in Mans Harbor. Yeah, they're the first and last place you see coming to and leaving the Outer Banks on Highway 64 in Dare County, but they're also real when it comes to fresh local seafood. Troy Outland, real. Curtis and Josh, real. The indoor crab shedders, real. Stop by and see for yourself right next to White Shopping Center and check them out on social media. Outland Seafood in Mans Harbor. Real.
At the south end of Roanoke Island, a quiet little village, lies a marina known for having one of the finest fishing fleets on the Outer Banks. Whether it be an offshore excursion, a nearshore charter, or headboat fishing, Wanchese Marina is where to go. Wanchese Marina is a full-service marina, complete with a fueling dock, bait, tackle, ice, and the landing grill restaurant. All of this is just a few minutes from some of the finest fishing spots around. Book online at wanchesemarina.com. Wanchese Marina, 4457 Mill Landing Road, Wanchese.
Justin, a lot of people remember my years running the Reelin, the charter boat out of the Oregon Inlet Fishing Center. And, I had a mate on board all summer long from California who we'll talk about in other stories about the boats he runs now. But that summer, my business partner, the owner of the boat, Mickey Hayes of Southern Shores Realty, he said, Marty, look, he said, I got a friend. He just graduated from the University of Colorado, and before he goes to work in the family business, he would love to come out here and spend a summer in Nag's Head, and he'd love to be a part of this fishing fleet. You think you could let him ride out with you? Well, I trusted this man's judgment so much. I was like, well, what's his family business? And he said, Coors Brewing Company.
So Coors.
Yeah, Coors Beer.
Coors Beer, okay.
And Colorado Boulder, maybe, I think.
Okay,
Colorado.
yeah, that sounds right.
So I said, I said, he can ride out with us, and we can't afford to pay him, but if he wants to learn, we'll make him like a free second mate in exchange for teaching him the trade. That's how it works, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Where if you're a mate or wanting to get into the fleet, you got to pay some dues.
Okay.
So he come out, and he was a small stature. He was probably 5'6", and maybe 140 pounds. Nice guy, classy, nice guy. Just totally awestruck by that fleet at Oregon Inlet.
Yeah.
So he rode out with us most of the early summer, and he didn't get in the way. He didn't ask me questions. He worked hard. And finally, it got to be August, and my mate had to go to a doctor's appointment that he could not avoid.
Right.
So I said to Brad, his name was Brad Coors. I said, Brad, are you ready to go solo? This could be your first day. You've done well. You've paid attention. I'm comfortable with you. You want to try it? And he said, yes, sir. So the next day we got down there, and we had a group charter that had 7 or 8 boats booked from Ducks Unlimited, the big, the big hunting group.
Mm-hmm.
And this, there was a head guy, and he had put on the 7 boats, he put 6 people on 6 of the boats, and that left his boat. And I think by design, there's only 1 person on his boat. In other words, he filled up the other boats with the maximum of 6 people, and that only left 1 person left, which was him. So he got on my boat by himself. Very rare to have a 1-person charter on a 6-passenger boat. So we headed offshore, and because he had to get all those people on the other boats and organize, we were the last boat to leave, and my boat was the slowest boat in the fleet. So this is a key part of the story. Part of what makes the story amazing is some days the whole fleet goes to one spot. They might go southeast, they might go east, they might go northeast. On other days, it looks like a shotgun burst. They go from Hatteras to Rudy Inlet off Virginia Beach and everywhere in between.
Right.
This was one of those days where the fleet was spread all over the ocean. When I came out the inlet, I was the last charter boat, and I said, I'm going due east. It's the shortest run, and I'm behind everybody already, so that's what I'm going to do. Brad was down below rigging baits and getting prepared for our one-man charter. The guy on the charter, as we were pulling out of the dock, says, "Can I come up and ride on the bridge with you?" And that's always a big red flag, because you need to be listening and paying attention to that radio. Decisions you'll make all through the day depend on what's said in that first hour as you're heading offshore. And so I let him. He was by himself, and I let him, and he came up on the bridge, and buddy, he did not stop talking. All the way out. I was like, "Oh, why did I do this? Yak. Was your father a charter captain? Where are you from?" Blah, blah.
The traditional questions.
So we did, we headed offshore, and we were out there a long ways, and me going the shortest run was about 32 miles versus some runs are up to 60 or 70 miles, So I was just getting ready to start slowing down to set out my baits when I got a call over the radio. Call like I've never had in my life. I'll tell you what it was when we come back. Hey y'all, Captain Marty here to tell you that when my friends are in the market for a new boat engine or repair, I send them to the best, and that's at Ratcliffe Marine in Belhaven. Ratcliffe Marine is your official Suzuki outboard dealer. Suzuki motors are designed to get you on the water fast and get you back to the dock whenever you're ready. Ratcliffe Marine is also the largest repower center in North Carolina. So when you're in the market for a new motor or you need your Suzuki serviced, go to Ratcliffe Marine, 865 Highway 264 in Belhaven. So as I'm maybe 2 or 3 miles from slowing down and setting out the baits, we troll where you drag the baits around. I just wanted to get the man off the bridge. I could have gone a lot further. I'm like, I want him to get down, start fishing. Because my ears are hurting. So anyway, but it was a beautiful, calm day. And remember now, I'm going due east of Oregon Inlet. There are boats 30 miles below me. There are over 100 boats out in the ocean.
Right. Okay.
I get a call from Gary Oliver, who many folks listening to this podcast will know owns Fishing Unlimited, Outer Banks Pier, been in the part of our fleet for a long time. And at this time, he had a Whitaker boat, a classic Florida-built sport fishing boat, an old boat.
Okay.
And he would go fun. He was not a charter boat at that time. He would just go fun fishing. So he calls me on there. I didn't realize that he was behind me. No charter boats were behind me. But he had a group of his friends, several Coast Guard guys were on there. They were drinking Bloody Marys, of course, with a designated driver, and they were headed offshore. And Gary calls me up at the radio. "Hey, Marty, how you doing this morning?" I said, "I'm doing fine, Gary." He says, "Good, a pretty day, isn't it?" I said, "Yeah, it's a beautiful day." Getting ready to slow down. And he said, "Oh," he says, "Okay, how's your mate doing?" I said, "He's fine. He's down there up under the cabin rigging up baits." He says, "You sure about that?" I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "You better go look." And boy, the minute he said that, the color ran out of my face. And I slowed that boat down, and I laid down on the cabin top and stuck my hands to holler for the mate was not on the boat.
My gosh.
He was nowhere. And not only that, he had been gone for almost an hour. And,
oh my.
Now keep in mind the early part of the story, Gary come out in the ocean, also on a slow boat, also wanting to go on the shortest route possible. He too went due east, the short run. And just as they were having about their third Bloody Mary, somebody was up on the bridge. He said, "Hey Gary, look over there. There's a bucket." And when you're offshore, anything floating is good to fish around for mahi. Gary said, "There's a bucket." So they turned over there to go see if there's anything around. And he says, "Yeah, there's somebody hanging on to it too."
Oh, my Lord.
Now, keep in mind, Brad was in the water and had been in the water. I was 15 miles ahead of Gary, over the horizon and out of sight. How big is the ocean? How many different directions could he have gone that day? And by the grace of God, he went right down my wake, even though he couldn't see my wake or see me or anything. Me and him just had the same plan. Well, what had happened was Brad was down there rigging up, and he needed a bucket of water to thaw some ballyhoo out in, and he couldn't figure out, or he knew how to operate the washdown pump, the hose, the saltwater hose, but it wasn't working. He looked up on the bridge and saw it. He said, "Well, Captain's in deep conversation with this guy on the bridge. I'm not going to interrupt him."
Right.
This tells you why you don't have people on the bridge at certain times. He said, "I'll just get a bucket." So he got a bucket. Then he said, "I'll tie a rope to the bucket." And the only rope he could lay his hands on was a dock line, and they're like 20 feet long or 25 feet long. He put it around the handle of the thing. He went back to the corner of the boat. I'm looking straight ahead, looking for things to fish around and talking to this guy distracted. Brad threw that bucket over the side, didn't realize he was standing on that coil of rope. And when that bucket hit the water with a boat going 20 knots straight ahead, it snatched it out of his hand. And when those loops came tied around his feet, it flipped him head for tail right over the side of the boat.
Oh my gosh.
He hit that water hard. And then he came up and that diesel engine's roaring and the boat is racing away from him. And he spit out the water and hollered, but he said, we were just sitting up there chatting, had no idea the only person on the lower portion of the boat had fell over the side. So he kicked off his shoes. He was smart. He trapped air under the bucket and he looked down to the south and there was what we call the tracking towers, the Navy guys from Oceana use, like oil rigs, or they're 125 feet tall. He saw one. He said, well, maybe I could swim to that, pushing this bucket along. See, the bucket trapping air gave him flotation. So he started swimming, but he did not realize the current was going the opposite direction. He had never made that. But luckily for him, he was in the water about an hour, and he looked up. Here come a boat about to run him over, and what luck. The last boat out of 100 boats just happened to come right down by him. They picked him up. He said, I fell off the railing, and that's when Gary made that phone call. So Gary, I took the boat out of gear and waited. I had to wait an hour. And pretty soon, here come Gary Oliver with his boat and my mate and brought him back to me. And I was so shook up, as you started the story with. I was so shook up, I would have preferred just to turn around and go back to the dock. But I didn't. We decided, no, we're all here. We're safe. Let's go fishing. And we did. Now, there's a footnote to the story.
Okay.
The footnote is every year we have what's called the East-West Banquet. And it's a private tournament, East-West tournament, where we pit one side of the marina against the other. And it's for bragging rights. And it's a roast and a gag award ceremony. And at that East-West Banquet that year, they called Brad up there and they gave him a 5-gallon bucket with a shorter rope tied to it, but they had cut the bottom out of the bucket so it wouldn't have any resistance. Of course, it wouldn't have held any water either, but at least it wouldn't have snatched him off the back of the boat. He went from there. Here's the rest of the story. He went not straight back to the brewery. He went to work for Congressman Jack Kent Cooke in Washington, D.C. for a year as an intern. Then he went to the brewery company, and when it was sold, he actually went into, he's a hunting guide out of Denver, Colorado, elk, deer, bear, all that kind of stuff. So he loved that guiding. He loved what we were doing. And I tell you, that would have been a sad day, because I have some other stories like that of other people that weren't that lucky. That's my story for you about Man Overboard.